Today's session is all about discovering public APIs and the public API network with Postman. So this is going to be really exciting for any of you who are either consumers of public APIs that have worked with public APIs or that create public APIs. Postman's a not only a great place to test and develop APIs, but it's a great place to discover APIs. So we have a really great team with us today from the public API network that I'd love to have introduce themselves as we go through this session. So do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys? Kyle, Yannick?
Yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Yannick Daly. I am the API Network Evangelist Lead at Postman. So, I'm part of the API Network team. Excited to dive into a little bit of this content with you and give you some insights on what we've been working on.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Klika. I'm part of the API network team as well. I'm the partner engineer.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited and I appreciate working with you guys. We've worked together in the last couple of weeks to put on this presentation for you and also share a lot of really interesting updates about the public network that, are happening as we speak. So let's take this time to kind of dive right in and share some insight with you on that front. But before we go ahead, I'd love to have Yannick kind of talk about the agenda for today. Do you want to share what we'll be talking about today, Yannick?
Yes. So, I'll go ahead and start off with an intro to the Postman API Network. So, what exactly it means to have a workspace on the public API network, public workspaces, things like that. Just so you guys have a nice overview of that type of content. And then I'll go into some of our new features and how that applies to both the publisher and consumer. So we do have a verified teams feature that's in soft launch right now that I'm going to get into and show how that helps both publishers and consumers alike. And a guided auth experience as well. So some features related to authentication on the public workspaces and other types of workspaces on the network. And then we'll get into some hands-on examples of Postman public workspaces. I think I'm going to kind of ingrain it into the first two chapters there, so you guys can get a live look at some of these workspaces and who's on the network itself. Then I'll kick it off over to Kyle, who will demo certain features like how to create a workspace, and he'll get into the nitty-gritty of things. And of course, we'll open up the last segment for some extra resources and Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a lot of resources for you all. And just so you have some insight as well, any questions that you have during this session, feel free to post them in the Q&A section at the bottom. We have some amazing moderators with us, Debo, who's one of our postmanauts, as well as Danny, who is also one of our postmanauts, active on our community side. They're here to answer any questions you might have, as well as share any resources as well. So feel free to direct all your questions to the Q&A as we go through the session. But before we do that, I wanted to take this time to actually learn a little bit more about you all, since we have such a diverse group of people joining. So there are a couple of questions that I'd love for you all to participate in. First of all, we'd love to know how familiar you are with Postman. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll just so it gives us a little bit of insight, whether you're a beginner, whether you're an intermediate, whether you are an expert with Postman, and what your insight level are. So it looks like we have about 77 people that have participated. Most of these folks are intermediate with Postman, so that's really great to know that y'all have really great Postman knowledge as well. So I'll go ahead and share those results with you all. So I hope you can kind of see, your Postman familiarity level. And then finally, another poll that I wanted to ask is if you are a consumer or a producer of public APIs, or if you are both. That I think that would be really helpful on our end. This will give us a little bit more insight on what our audience is kind of like, whether they're consumers, whether they're producers, because at Postman, we both, we have, workflows and happy paths, I guess, for both the producer and the consumer persona. So I think your insight into Postman might look different on both sides. And I think Yannick and Kyle will give some really great insight. So it looks like today we have a lot of consumers. So let me go ahead and share that poll as well. So yeah, it looks like 78% of today's audience is consumers. Whereas, we don't have any producers online, but I think this session will definitely inspire some producers as well. So just so we have an insight of who our audience is as well. So let's go ahead and stop sharing that, and let's move forward. So with that, I wanted Yannick to kind of kick it off and kind of talk about the API network. So go ahead on Yannick.
All right. So thanks, Pooja, for the intro. So again, my name is Yannick. I'm part of the API network evangelist team at Postman. So I work pretty closely with publishers on the network and getting them onboarded with public workspaces. And we're big on developer experience and quality right now. So that's the majority of our work when we're onboarding those publishers, is to work pretty closely with them. So I'm going to intro you guys into the public API network, which is the world's largest public API hub. I'm not sure if you guys know of these statistics, but we have about 30 million users on Postman right now. And what that translates into is a combination of both consumers and producers. And we've ended up with about 200,000 public workspaces on the public API network. So at a very high level, API network is a place where publishers can share their APIs. And it's not just publishers too. I think any individual developer can create an API or a collection and share it with others publicly within the network. But I think mostly what we see is brands or API producers trying to share an optimal version of their APIs for developers like yourselves or consumers to get started a lot faster and just kind of have a rubric for jumping into their APIs. So what that translates into is about 500,000 public collections hosted within these workspaces. And what we did last year for our State of the API during 2023, if you guys are unfamiliar with that, we have it published on the Postman site. We get a lot of insights about the API market across the last year or so. And that includes, which roles are interested in APIs the most, our Postman data that we take a look at to see who's engaging with these APIs. And I think one of the statistics that we look at are the most popular APIs on the network as well. This will probably change as we onboard more selection and have different types of quality on the public network. But what we have here is a Salesforce platform with over 100,000 forks already. I think users have found it to be very useful to get started with Salesforce, but it's not just that. It's other brands like PayPal and Notion who have climbed in popularity over the last few months. So we work directly with these types of producers to up their quality and get developers started with their APIs a lot faster.
Awesome. Cool. So let's dive into public workspaces.
Yeah. So what is a public workspace? If you guys interact with Postman at all and work with workspaces already, a lot of you said you're intermediate. So essentially it is what it says. It's a workspace that's public. A lot of the features are very similar to the actual Postman product. This allows you to share these workspaces with the world. So if you are Notion, for instance, who has this screenshot here, they have information that's baked into their workspace with details on how to get started, links to their developer portal, and then on the left-hand side, they have a collection with some of their APIs and endpoints.
Yeah, for sure. And so, we'll have our moderators post the Notion's public workspace in there, but just to kind of give you a deeper insight, I hope Yannick has it frozen. But yeah, we have the Notion API workspace as well. Yannick, we got you back?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. All right. Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah. It froze for a
Okay.
bit, but I'm just showing the Notion public workspace here.
All right. Yeah, so I can jump in right from there. This is Notion's public workspace. So essentially, this is a sandbox environment that they wanted to have available for general developers. Um, as you see, this is a workspace overview of to get started with those APIs. So they have links here to their full documentation. Um, and then once you head into that collection, onto the left side, you see some of their folders for some of their endpoints. So it's itemized by users, databases, etc. But once you jump into those, you'll see like descriptions and examples on how to use their particular APIs. So if you as a consumer ever want to interact with Notion's APIs, this is directly from them. And you can fork this directly into your workspace and start interacting with it and messing around with variables or however you want to itemize this. So this is the beauty of the public API network because we have API producers that can get it directly to you and you can just start playing around with it without having to fiddle too much with developer portal documentation and things like that, especially with a lot of people using Postman to test APIs. This is the best way of getting your feet wet when interacting with these. What Pooja is showing now is the team profile. So this is something that we advocate for additional branding for publishers. So of course they have banner, logos, but of course socials on the left-hand side where they can jump into developer portals and things like that. And what we have is a team description too, where you can get a high level overview of maybe their API program or just the product in general. But here, let's say that Notion had multiple products that they wanted to advertise, for instance, or I guess advertise is the wrong word, but more so multiple products that they wanted to showcase within a workspace, or multiple APIs. They can have multiple workspaces hosted within their team. So if you head up and there's one workspace listed there, but let's say that they came out with a brand new product tomorrow, you could trust that if they had an API, they would put it here as a workspace, and then you can go to the team and you see the breakdown of those products. So other publishers, like I believe a couple others, maybe Klaviyo or a few others, I can't think of one at the top of my head, but PayPal, for instance, they have multiple products that they have, and they'll break that down via workspace and you would see that hosted in their team profile. So we're hoping that these profiles will be kind of a hub for all things for that company or publisher as they continue to put their APIs on our network.
Cool. All right, let's talk about developer experience.
Yeah. So that's our major goal for our team, by the way. As we're onboarding these publishers, we want to improve the developer experience across the board for APIs, not just on Postman, but just in general. We want these developer portals to have like run in Postman buttons so that people can click those and jump right into these APIs. And that's part of an extension of the public API network. They can take these public workspaces and just kind of bind them in a run in Postman button. And developers that are exploring their documentation or developer portals can click those and jump right in with the right environments, variables, and instructions, essentially, that improve that developer experience. So collections are the heart of all of that. We showcased Notion's collections there where they have good examples of how to get started with their APIs. And they're very powerful because they can be tailored to certain use cases. If you're a publisher and you're looking to if you have difficult use cases that you often see developers running into, those publishers can tailor those to the needs of the developer at the end of the day and have a better onboarding experience, for difficult use cases or other types of use cases that are most interesting to developers. And it's easily shareable, as I mentioned before. Run and Postman buttons are getting more popular with these publishers, and they're embedding it into their developer portals. So if you ever come across one of those in the wild, just give it a click and see how these have set up across these publishers' developer portals and how they've incorporated Postman into their workflows.
Yeah. I'm actually just posting in the chat just some learning center, just about a learning center link about creating run and Postman buttons. So I guess these are really useful to kind of share these public collections, as you mentioned. So feel free to take a look at that as well. And so, yeah, and we have some questions in the chat, so feel free to have those be in the Q&A section, and we'll have our moderators go ahead and answer those. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about quality. So, Yannick, you mentioned that this is a really big aspect of what we do here on the public network side. Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of segueing from developer experience, the power of quality is important. I think this slide is more so for people interested in publishing APIs. So what we've done, we've been working closely with publishers on the network, and a lot of times, like you may have a dev advocate or a technical writer that knows that a lot of people are using Postman, or maybe they've seen it in their support tickets before, like, hey, maybe I would like a Postman collection for your APIs. And they'll end up creating collections, but they won't have any documentation or any type of overviews or things like that to kind of guide the developer. What we've been working on with publishers on lately is guidance. Like their developers love guidance on these within these workspaces. That includes improvement to documentation quality overall, and just an overall getting started guide so that they can just jump right in. A lot of these have no context, and you have collections that are just kind of sitting there. So we've been helping them spruce this up, and we've seen incredible results with those efforts. So I'm gonna have Pooja, if you can jump into the Salesforce platform here.
Yeah, for sure.
Salesforce is one of our most popular, if not the most popular workspace on the network. I'm sure many people are using Salesforce on a daily basis. But what we had them do is create this guide for their platform APIs. And as you can see, they broke it down into different personas. So new Salesforce users, new Postman users. They have logos here, a quick start on connecting Postman to Salesforce from their Trailhead project. And yeah, if you hop over there, you kind of see it gets right into that. Set up your org, and just very user-friendly experience there overall. Just a lot of guides that they have baked into their workspace. And we fully support all of that, like links to your developer portal or just guides to get the developer through things. They have, guides for regular Postman users. So many of you are intermediate and you would use this guide to get started, like just set up these tokens and get to work. So a lot of this is things that we've been advocating for these publishers to include. And we've seen an overall increase of API calls, like 15% for Salesforce once they added this guide, and the 16% decrease of auth errors once they added this information here. So we realized that this is quality. This is what we want for each public workspace, especially if it's an official one from the company or the API producer themselves. And that at the end of the day helps developers like yourselves who are consuming these public APIs. So once you go into these things, make sure you take a look at these collection descriptions or workspace overviews. Because as we continue to push quality on the network, you'll have a better guide on how to get started a lot faster and bring down that time to first call. I think the other one we want to take a look at was Klaviyo, right?
Yep. So let me just move over to Klaviyo. Okay, there we go.
Yes. So this is another one. This is another company that we worked with pretty closely. And not only do we help them with branding and all of that overall stuff, but just for the overall dev experience, we have another getting started guide here. And once we finished work with them, they had their API calls go up 40%. So we can see tangible results for increasing quality for these workspaces. And we realize that it's very important to the end user. So for consumers like yourself, these are the reasons why developer experience is so important to us. I think one of our main metrics that we track on the network is the amount of 200 OKs. And we use that because we know it measures the happiness of a developer at the end of the day. So more 200 OKs is our goal. And of course, in the chat, if you guys have any suggestions as to how we can continue advocating for quality for these publishers, please let us know. We're still looking to expand that quality even more.
Definitely. And then one more thing I would love for you to talk about is just the public network in general, because this is a great place for discovery. So do you want to dive a little bit deeper into just where people can find different APIs?
Yeah. So this is our explore page for the public API network. If you guys have hit this page before, you can reach it at the top there where it says API network. So anywhere you are on the web app, I think in the desktop app, it's available as well. It will link into your browser.
Mhm.
But here we have featured APIs, and a lot of these are people we work with, and some we may not work with directly. Some of these are self-serve, but these are APIs and publishers that are pushing their collections on the network. As you can see, we have it broken down by recommended collections for you, what's trending for the week, popular for the day. We even have categories on the left-hand side. So if you're shopping around for a specific um, AI API, you can check that to see who's on the network right now as we continue to build out this new selection. And we also, my team specifically also spotlights some of these APIs. So Pooja, if you head over to Spotlight on the top left, yeah. So here we have like new and noteworthy APIs or publishers that have just released their APIs recently. UPS worked with us pretty closely, and we have their developer. Um, we have their APIs here as a workspace, and it's getting a decent amount of traction. Um, so this is essentially where you can explore. I think the most important feature for developers coming in looking for these type of APIs is the search bar up top, which you can also go ahead and type, Salesforce, for instance, and you see it's published there alongside their requests and other collections. So you can also filter out that search. If you're looking for a specific request, you can even copy and paste it directly into the search bar. So we're continuing to expand these features. So this I think will continue to expand, and we'll have more features available for you guys on that explore page. But if you guys are ever looking for APIs to consume, this is a good way to do it.
Awesome. Great. So let's kind of talk a little bit about verification because a lot of these look like they are verified. So I'd love for you to chat about that.
Yes. So as you guys can see, as we're clicking around, many of these publishers have blue check marks. A couple of things that we're trying to push here is not just authenticity. So if the verified team for Microsoft Graph is the actual Microsoft Graph team, but that's less important to us. The other side is quality. I think that's what our major efforts are for my team, especially when we're working with publishers, is to set the bar for quality even further. So I explained most of this in like the previous slides, but what we're doing is having them set up getting started guides, examples, guided auth, which is a new feature that I think many of you would like, that I'll get into on the next slide. But we've been working with publishers to implement these things to give an easier time for developers at the end of the day. And we've set that with a verified check mark. So the check mark itself, I think, is just to signify that we've actually gone through those hoops and we've worked with them on quality. But they're also the owner of those APIs, just as a heads up. So that's essentially the verified teams feature. We wanted to kind of inject that feeling of FOMO to publishers so that they can get their quality up, which has worked tremendously well, by the way, based on what we've seen with overall traffic and decrease in auth errors.
Mhm.
Right now, we're in soft launch. So our team's been working directly with them on a case-by-case basis. But at our upcoming post-con convention on April 30th, I think May 1st, I think May 1st will be the actual date where we announce this for general availability. So this would be the last call for soft launch. If you're a publisher and you own those APIs, feel free. We'll have some contact information at the end of this. Feel free to get into soft launch, which will be happening over the next month. After that, it's going to be a cutoff point, and we're going to have like an actual team, a dedicated team that's working on this. And you'll have to fill out a form on the actual Postman site. So right now, it's available for soft launch. If you are a publisher, feel free to reach out to us and we can get you started on this and create a workspace for you in the process, or help you create one, I should say.
Yep, sounds good. So yeah, you'll want to reach out to actually Yannick, and we'll share his his contact info. So if you have a public API, feel free to reach out to get verified, and then we can go through that. So let's talk about guided auth, because I think this is a really important feature as well.
Yeah, so this is another brand new feature we've been pushing publishers to implement, and I think this will affect any of you interested in consuming public APIs. Um, the biggest wall to a successful call, and I'm sure many of you can attest to this, is authentication. Um, and that may vary based on poor documentation, or maybe they have a bunch of hoops that you got to jump through to get a proper token. Or, you know, if you set up an OAuth app, maybe there are certain scopes that you have to include. And to get started and just to like see if you can get a test or a working API call, I think a lot of developers are trying to get authenticated as quickly as possible. So what we decided to do is implement a guided auth feature where publishers can go in and set up an experience for the consumer once they land on, you know, specific requests. So for let's say that you guys are looking into a Salesforce or a Klaviyo API, and you go into the request and you hit the authorization tab. You'll get prompted, like the example shows here, with uh, you know, help get started with Auth for Klaviyo or Notion, for instance. And there will be a published set of steps from the publisher themselves on where you need to go to get an API key, how to generate that API key. And then once you have it, you can come back, paste it into that field that's set right beside it. And you can save that authorization for the collection. And then once you start getting into the request, you can go ahead and send, and it will be a guided auth experience. So you should be good to go from there. So that's what we wanted to do to kind of trim down auth errors that users were experiencing or developers were experiencing. So we have publishers implementing this feature, but not only that, once they verify their base URLs, so api.getpostman.com, let's say that was verified within the auth feature. If you invoke that base URL anywhere in Postman, it doesn't have to be from the public workspace itself. If you put that in Postman, the guided auth experience will be published and tied to that base URL. So we'd be able to help you through that auth experience once the publisher sets it up for their base URL. So it's not just tied to the public workspace. So it's a great way to just get started and you know, try to mitigate some of that time that you're spending on getting authorized. Now, the best version of this is one-click authorization for OAuth 2.0. What we're trying to push publishers to do is create their own OAuth apps. Just for testing purposes, I think that we'd advocate for the user at the end of the day to create their own OAuth app with scopes. But if you're just trying to get started with an API, we want you to get your feet wet as quickly as possible. And I think sorry, this is off the cuff. If we can find the workspace for HubSpot.
HubSpot, let's go for it.
And we'll show you what this looks like. So if you head into the HubSpot public workspace, I would go with the second one there.
Okay.
Yes, and then jump into any request.
Any request.
Yes. So I think like one of those get requests there. Yeah, and the authorization tab.
Okay.
Should have something. Yes. So here it says need help authorizing with HubSpot. Now, if you click that prompt there, Pooja, it'll open up. So what they did was they created their own OAuth application for Postman users to test with. So all Pooja has to do is click authorize, and it heads over to HubSpot. Now you would sign into your HubSpot account. You would get authorized. You don't have to go through the whole flow, but assuming you have a HubSpot account, you would just sign into that. You get automatically authorized, and it'll send you right back to Postman. So it's like a single sign-on experience. So we're trying to implement this this flow with more publishers so that you have a better time accessing authorization. And especially if you're just trying to get a test request or a test call going, this is the optimal way to use it. All you have to do is click, and you don't have to worry about you know, anything else here, or generating API keys or saving those keys, things like that. So we're trying to push for that now. That's a really cool feature. So look out for guided auth as we continue to expand that.
Cool. Yeah. And then that kind of brings us into metrics. So if you want to talk really quick on metrics, because I know that Kyle has a whole demo as well, kind of going through some of the stuff as well. But yeah, if you wanted to give some insight on that as well.
Yes, just to trim down my time a little bit. This will be my last slide here. Publisher metrics. So if you're a publisher or you guys decide to ever publish your APIs on Postman, we are now providing metrics for publishers to track that growth. So they can track this in real time and check this at any moment. Right now, we have a drill down of overall forks. So who's use, who's using those publishers' APIs, the amount of API calls, and who's achieving successful calls. Now, how this is important to you, the consumer, if you're most of you are consumers of these, the publisher can identify response code distributions and pain points. So they can take a look at if you're running into a lot of 401 errors. So if they have a graph there with 50% of their users hitting 401s, we can say, hey, like take a look at this. You may have to reconsider your instructions on, authentication, or maybe you should add guided auth to your workspace. They can also check out how many views, and if they have high views and a low set of forks, and not a lot of people are forking those APIs, maybe it's confusing to the users or the consumers at the end of the day, and they can respond to that. So that's a feature we're pretty excited about, and as we continue to expand that, we'll have more metrics for publishers. If you guys are ever interested in, publishing APIs to the network, we have that available.
Cool. And Danny just shared a blog about some public workspace metrics, so feel free to look at that to learn a little bit more. This was really great, Yannick. I feel like you gave a great insight, especially into the consumer's experience. I wanted to kind of take this moment to switch it over to Kyle, who is going to kind of give us a demo a little bit more on the publisher side, but also the publisher's experience as well as working with teams. So with that, I'm gonna let Kyle kind of take over screen share, and he can kind of give you much more detailed demo of that experience as well. Awesome.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, so I'm going to take you on the journey of an API publisher on the public API network. And today we're going to start with how to create a public profile. So when you go to Postman, this is kind of, your landing page. In the top right corner, if you go to Teams and click on your team settings, this will take you to your team profile. So you want to make sure your org name is represented in your team name, and you want to make sure your team domain makes sense. Your team domain is actually going to show up in all your public elements as in the URL. To actually make it public, you're actually going to click this check mark here, and that will make a public profile. So once your profile's up, you're going to want to edit it. So here, this is where people are going to find your public profile. As you can see here, your team domain is already in the URL. And here you can actually write in a quick overview of what your team does, what your company does, and you can use Markdown or a rich text editor. And as you can see, you can even embed YouTube videos. You can embed buttons, links to your documentation and your company page. You can add a little summary for just if somebody would just want to scan real quickly what you do. And then you can even see how many profile views you have, plus social media links. So this is a really good landing page and a place to tell people who you are and what you're going to do and show them on your Postman workspaces. So, yep, now we have a profile. Oh, actually, let me show you some good examples of team profiles. So a team profile is a real good place to brand, show your brand and show off who you are. Think of it, it's just like social media. This one's really nice because it's really branded. They have a good YouTube video. This one's great because they really go into depth on how they work. They are a AI company, and they even have some great photos of some AI generation here. And this one I really like because once again, it's really branded. And you can also see that they explain what APIs they have, as well as links to their documentation and developer communities. And you can also see that this one is a verified team. Sweet. So now that you have your public profile, you're going to want to add a workspace, a public workspace. So to do that, you kind of go up to here in workspaces and create it just like any other workspace. You're going to want to make sure you have a good name, a summary, and then on top of that, you will switch the access to public. Once you have a public workspace, you'll be able to find it on your team profile. So going back here, oops, let's cancel that. And here's one I already made for today. And you can see that it's viewable from your public workspace. So you know you're in a public workspace when you see this world icon. This lets you know that this is public, everyone can see it. And once again, at the top, you can see your team domain along with your workspace as the link to it. So you can share this link anywhere in your documentation. So now that we have a workspace that's public, we want to add APIs. There's a lot of ways to add APIs. You can, of course, hand create a collection and import pull requests one by one. But if you really want to maintain your published APIs, there are a lot of different techniques. We have the ability to actually import open API schemas from your code repos like GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. Here I did that already. In some cases, you can actually add in a two-way sync. So changes here will actually reflect in GitHub and vice versa. So we can go and look at our definition. And from there, you can actually generate your collection from this definition. And when you do that, if any changes you make in here will actually reflect in this collection. So this is one way to tackle it. And if you have a very large API catalog, HubSpot actually did a pretty good blog article on how they manage their massive API catalog using GitHub synced with Postman and how their developer advocates make changes to either one to keep them in sync for all their consumers to fork. So the other way to do this too, okay, let me go grab that link, is using.
We'll post the links in the chat as well.
Okay, awesome. So here you can actually use the Postman API or the Postman SDK. So you can create collections, environments. You can update collections and environments. You can even update your workspace. Oop, sorry, my mouse was super tricky this morning. Okay, and you can even update your description, all types of stuff. We even have endpoints to generate open API schema from Postman and back. So if you have a CI/CD pipeline and maybe you're a small team and you just want to publish when you make updates to your API in code through GitHub or whatever code repo, you can actually create a nice automated flow this way. So there's plenty of ways to get APIs on your workspace. So if we go back to our public workspace here, now that you have APIs, you definitely want to share them, right? So there's, once again, you can always share the link to the workspace. You can actually share a link to the collection. But what's more popular and is using run and Postman buttons. These buttons are, when someone clicks them, they actually fork your collection. You can add an environment. You can even use the Postman SDK to do some custom environments. So for instance, if someone on your dev portal creates an account, creates some credentials, they can click a button and it'll fork your collection, but it'll also auto-generate their environment with their credentials. So they can jump right into making requests. A good example of these run in Postman buttons that show up in dev portals and in documentation is right here from Tomorrow.io. As you can see, they have different methods, different things they're trying to show you, and you can click this run in Postman button. We'll go over a little bit more on what they're doing there later. And so now that you have your collections, you have the ability to share them, and you have a nice profile, you're going to want to focus on your developer experience. So for instance, if we go to Zoom, we can go to their profile. go to their workspace from their profile. And you can see they have a lot of APIs. But they have this thing called the Getting Started collection. So this is a more focused collection on getting started quickly. As you can see, they have some pro tips. They have a few collections with a few quick endpoints. And you can see this is very popular. It has like 2,000 forks. If you have a lot of APIs and you want to kind of just get some people going quickly, this is a great method to use. And then let's go back to Tomorrow.io. Tomorrow.io is actually what I think is amazing. You should do cookbooks or like recipe collections. So for instance, instead of just showing a reference of your entire API suite and just putting it out there like docs, you can actually show them use cases on ways to link and make workflows out of API. So for instance, they have one here, set up severe weather alerts around a geofence. So we're going to do this. I'm going to fork their collection from the Run in Postman button. I'm going to fork it into my personal workspace. And here I can actually go ahead and create their severe weather alerts. What would be even cooler is if they actually added maybe Slack or Discord and showing how they can integrate with somebody else. And then on top of that, if you really just wanted to create a bot, which I've done plenty of times, you can create a Postman monitor. And so now people can go fork your collection, create bots, and get some more usage out of your API, all within Postman. It's a great way for people to test out, integrations between your API and others and other workflows. And I think Yannick already showed you the HubSpot with guided auth. Obviously, another quick way to get people started faster with your API. And this all creates a great developer experience, which we're all about. So yeah, that's about what I have to show.
That's awesome. Well, you showed a lot of different things, and we actually have about a good amount of time as well left. But let me just go back to my desktop here. Okay, great. Yeah, so there's so many resources that you showcased. You showcased about like different things about syncing with different APIs, things like that. We have all of these available that we'll be sharing in the slides. I know that we've shared a lot of links today, actually, in the chat. So we'll be sharing this out in the slides. But with that, are there any other thoughts that you guys wanted to, some questions that you wanted to kind of go through? Because I know we have some frequently asked questions. And yeah, maybe we can kind of, with our 15 minutes left, maybe kind of go through some of those FAQs.
Yeah. So I'm happy to take these. So a lot of these questions are based on questions we get from publishers. So I saw some mentions of people interested in publishing APIs in the chat. So the question is there a cost to joining? It's absolutely free. I think the only confines is just the basic Postman team pricing scale. So if you have 3 members on a team, you can create a public API for free and share that publicly. So there's no cost associated with that, just to let everybody know. And then the second thing is co-marketing opportunities that we do with publishers. So if you have a public API and you post it on the network and you have a quality workspace, what our team has done a few times, and I think Kyle showed an example with HubSpot before, I think that's a good one. We've worked directly with those teams to publish blogs for good use cases for the end developer or consumer. So if you guys have checked out the Postman blog, we have a lot of resources on there talking about some of those use cases and how they're best used on the API network and how these publishers have pretty much created their workspaces to satisfy those use cases. So a lot of really cool opportunities we've been doing with publishers, and we're hoping to have more resources available to consumers as we continue to do these co-marketing opportunities. And then lastly, how can my team be featured on the API network? These are teams that we monitor quality on the network all the time. So if you have a team that publishes a workspace similar to the quality that you guys saw today as we went through some of those examples, If it's documented, if there's good documentation, your requests are filled out. Maybe there's getting started collections in there, all types of cool use cases and examples, and just examples of quality that we've gone through today. Our team is happy to feature this on the API network, and what we mean by that is a featured badge. So we have the verified badge, which is to exemplify authenticity and quality. But the featured badge is something that we switch out every couple of weeks to showcase just really cool APIs, and we're still open to doing that and showcasing developers that are doing a good job curating their content.
Awesome. Yeah, this was really great. And I appreciate you guys kind of sharing all this insight. I think, is there any major call to actions as of now that you wanted to talk about bef in terms of just like public workspaces, like anything, like how anything that publishers can do at this point? Like, what would you recommend as best practices of getting started?
Yeah, I think following some of the tips that Kyle went through today is a great start. If you guys want to work with us directly and setting up a workspace, feel free to reach out to, I think my LinkedIn is going around in the chat.
Yeah.
Feel free to send me a message there. Our team will take a look at it. If you're like an individual developer that has an API that they're building, we're happy to give best practices there. Myself and Kyle can work with you on that. If you're a larger publisher or a startup and you're wondering how to market your APIs, I think the API network is a great place to go for that. We've seen as quality goes up, traffic goes up. More API calls start to increase as well. So we're happy to help with that. And if you want, just send me a message there on LinkedIn. I think the other thing we wanted to talk about was PostCon. Yes.
Yes, yeah. So we have something really exciting happening, which is PostCon. So PostCon is our annual conference, but this is actually one of the first times we're doing it in 2024 after a big hiatus. So it is from April 30th through May 1st. So if you are interested in learning from PostCon, we have some really great hands-on workshops as well for our day one hands-on workshop. And then we have our day two hands-on lab. I actually am able to share a promo code for you all if you're interested in PostCon. So you'll get like at least maybe 30% off, or actually 50% off the original price of the ticket. So if you're joining us today on this Intergalactic, I wanted to take this time for you all to share a PostCon promo code. So if you're interested in coming and joining us all in San Francisco, we'll be talking about a lot of different things. And this is where we will also be featuring some really interesting things around public APIs. Did you want to give that announcement at all, Yannick, about what we'll be diving into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys become publishers within the next year, something to look forward to that we do at PostCon is the API Awards. So my team and other teams come together and we decide who has the best content on the public API network over the last year. And we showcase those as awards. So Abhinav, our CEO, will be discussing some of those publishers on stage during his keynote at PostCon. So that could also be you if you're interested in creating some content for the API network. And if there's some growth or overall quality that we see, your workspace could be next. You never know. So just some additional incentives for publishers that are interested in showcasing those APIs.
Yeah, for sure. And PostCon is going to be great. I think like not only just on the public network front, giving out some awards on that, but just for anybody who's interested in our workshops, we're giving away 2 badges. So the one of our badges is API development with Postman, and the other one is a intro to API testing and prototyping. So these are some 2 really interesting badges that you can get as going through a PostCon workshop. So definitely take a look at PostCon because it's happening pretty soon. And we'll all be in San Francisco. And also, if you like T-Pain, it's a great place to find him. So definitely join us there. And yeah, is there anything else from either of you, Kyle, Yannick? We went through the FAQ, we went through some of the links. We've shared we have a lot of additional resources. So these are our Learning Center resources, our Postman workspaces, team collaboration. So we have a lot of content and resources to get you started, even if you wanted to get started and get better at your Postman skills here. So, we have some quick start tutorials. We'll have some of our moderators add some of those resources in the chat. But these are all learning resources for all of you to kind of get started, and you can kind of go from there. Any last words from you, Kyle, Yannick?
Well, thanks everyone for uh, your interest in learning a little bit more about public APIs. As I mentioned, feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in publishing one. Um, I think we can open the floor for any
Any
Q&A
Q&A?
if we haven't already. Oh, and Kyle, of course, if you have any last thoughts there.
I think Kyle might be on mute.
Oh, thanks for coming. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, for sure. There was one Q&A that I saw on the Q&A section that was a little bit interesting. Maybe for either of you, this is from someone who's never produced any public APIs and are looking to learn a little bit more. Are there any things that new publishers need to be careful of when it comes to like privacy, et cetera? Any thoughts on new publishers posting to the network, I guess?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say, or in terms of security and privacy, make sure you pay attention to your environment variables. One method too to be sure you aren't leaking anything to the public network is to create a team workspace or a personal workspace and actually fork that into your public workspace. So then you can make tests and check everything in your personal workspace, and then you can just pull from that in your public workspace. And then the other thing too, as a new producer, make sure you go through the whole flow of your API. Postman is a really good representative of like, if you can't easily use your API in Postman, they won't be able to easily use it in their own code. So by making sure you yourself can use your API as a consumer, go, to your own personal workspace, fork it, use it without very little issue, you will know that anyone coding with your API is also having a good time.
Awesome.
we actually have a story where we had a publisher try out their own flow and they were completely confused. So it was a good opportunity for us to help them with the quality of their workspace. So what Kyle's saying is definitely true. Walk through your workflows, and that will be a big step forward in improving that developer experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle and Yannick, for joining us today. I think we've gone through so much content, both on the producer side, both and the consumer side. We've shared a ton of resources. I have one more link for you all in the chat, which is our survey. So, the survey helps us, create more unique Postman Intergalactics and share more things with you all that you'd like to see and learn. So feel free to take our survey just to let us know about your experience here today. And yeah, we have shared a ton of content. As we mentioned, this session is recorded, so you will receive a recording of this session, as well as you'll receive the slides to this session, which has the hundreds of links that we've shared today. So feel free to take a look at that and also register for PostCon. We've shared our promo code as well, so it should be in the chat for you all. And yeah, we hope to either see you in person in San Francisco if you make it out to PostCon, or at one of our other future intergalactics. So thank you everyone for a amazing session. Thank you again, Kyle and Yannick. Yannick, always great and pleasure to work with you both. Lots of information that was shared today. So thank you again. And thanks to our moderators for posting links, helping out with the chat. So yeah, hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at a future intergalactic session. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.